another Make It Monday for Paper Tray Ink. This is Danelle Flanders, and today we're going to talk about taking a black and white stamp design and adding a little bit of color to create a focal point. I'll be working with two stamp sets for my cards today. This one is Give Thanks, and it's a pretty Thanksgiving set, and then I'll be using Peonies on Parade. Another good one that would work is Bold Blossoms. What you want is some of the stamps that are that are outlined and you can color them in. Those will really work the best for this technique. So I've gone ahead and stamped a sentiment from Give Thanks in the bottom corner. I wanted to make sure that I have room for that first. So I'm going to build my design around the sentiment. And I'll take some of the flowers and leaves from Peonies on Parade, and I'm just going to kind of build a design around the edge, the left and the top edge of the card. So I always use a piece of practice paper. I just use printer paper, and I stamp my design on printer paper, and just to see if it looks good or if I need to move something around or change it. So I kind of have already stamped my design on practice paper, and now I'm just transferring it to my card. I also have this little wheat stalk from Give Thanks here that I'm going to just put a few here and there. I want the black and white design as the background, and then I'm going to add some color in a minute here. I like how the wheat stalks add a little bit of darkness and kind of ground the card a little bit so it's not just all outlines. And as I was working on the card, I realized that I should have gone up a little bit higher with the flowers. I don't really like the white left at the top of the card, so I'm going to trim the card down just slightly when I'm done with all of my stamping. When figuring out where to place things, I always tend to think of it as you're creating a triangle. So you want a triangle of leaves. So you have three little sections of leaves. You want a triangle of flowers, and you want a triangle of the wheat stalks. So they're spread around your card pretty evenly, and the color will be also. And then you can just go ahead and fill in any spots that you feel are bare with the smaller stamps. Okay, I've gone ahead and trimmed the card slightly on the top and the bottom just to get rid of the white. I wanted the flowers to go off the edge of the card. And now what I'm going to do is emboss all of the flowers and leaves with clear embossing powder. This is because when I was practicing on my practice paper, printer paper, my ink wasn't quite dry yet and my Copics were smearing into the black ink. So emboss it with clear embossing powder and heat it up with the heat tool, and then your Copic markers won't bleed or mix with the black ink. It works much better. So I have my heat tool and I'm just going to heat up the embossing powder. And you can kind of see where it's melting onto the black ink. The black actually gets a little bit darker. So that's kind of a neat effect. Now the embossing is done and my ink is dry, and I just went ahead and cut a sliver of the design off of the left side. The left side's going to stay black and white, and I'm going to add some color to the right side with my Copic markers. So I started with the leaves with my lightest green, which is YG11, and then I took a YG63, and I'm just shading the veins and the edges of the leaves to add a little bit darker color. I am not by any means an expert on using Copic markers, so I'm sure there are probably better ways to shade and color. I only have about, I would say, 20 colors so far, so I'm just getting started. But this is how I do it so far. Probably need to take a class, but hopefully you'll get some inspiration from the shading. Then the last step I did on the leaves was a G09, and that was, I just hit the edges with the G09. The flowers I'm coloring in with a light gray first with W3, and then I added a hazelnut, which is E23, and a cocoa brown, which is E74. And then the bigger flowers, I'm just doing pinks and reds. I started with RV21 and added a coral over the top, R35, and then the last step was R29, a bright lipstick red around the edges of the flowers. So if you want to skip this part and not watch me color all the flowers, you can fast forward. I found that after each step of adding the darker color around the edges, I went back with the lighter color and just blended it again and smoothed out the edges so there weren't such defined lines. It was a little bit blended easier, I guess you could say. I also made sure to keep a little bit of white here and there just to add some highlights. Now I'm just adding the coral around some of the edges, and I am definitely not a perfectionist when it comes to this technique. I just kind of go as fast as I can and hit some of the edges, and then I'll go back in and try to blend it a little bit better again. Again, you can fast forward if you don't want to watch me color and shade. I really need to get more Copic markers though, because it's kind of therapeutic sitting here coloring. Now I'm going back in with the medium pink again, just to blend it a little bit. And I'm not trying to be perfect with it at all. I'm just trying to smooth out the dark, harsh edges. And last, I will define the edges with the darkest red that I have. With the darkest color, you really have to be the most careful because it's going to be the color that will show up the most, so you definitely don't want to try to go out of the lines with the darkest one. Just adds the fine detail that makes the flower pop. And then I think I'll do the last flower with the gray and brown again to add some fallish colors. So I just do the light gray kind of randomly. Leaving a little bit of white again. And then the hazelnut along the edges. blend it with the gray again really quickly. And then the cocoa brown around the edges to define it just a bit more. Then when everything's all done and colored, I'm going to add it to a card base. The black and white section is going to be flat to the card base, and then I'm going to pop up the colored section and just make it a focal point. You can add a piece of twine right here along the edge, or you can just leave it as is. And I added a few sequins, and I think I like it just as it is. Another way you can use this technique is to stamp an all over design in black and white, and then take a die, a frame die, and pop out, die cut the center. And after you take the center out, you color the centerpiece and put it back onto your card. So the outer portion is black and white and the inner portion will be colored. And I'll show you a sample of this at the end of the video. It's the purple and green card that I made. Hope you enjoy giving this technique a try and have a great week. Bye.